On September 13, 2022, the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Serbia banned the Pride Walk in Belgrade, which was the part of the EuroPride 2022, a European manifestation dedicated to LGBTQ plus rights. This was the first time that Serbia and Belgrade was the capital of such a manifestation. Radio Free Europe researched the topic of human rights through the prism of LGBTQ plus rights in this country and checked what things one cannot do in Serbia if they are a part of this community. They tackled the rights from the right to freely organize a pride parade to the absence of legally guaranteed rights to have a family as a same-sex partner. In 2021 alone, 83 incidents motivated by hatred towards the LGBTQ plus people were recorded in Serbia. And of that number, there were 19 cases of physical violence, according to the data of the non-governmental organization the SISNA. This organization, which documents frequently violence and discrimination continuously, violence and discrimination motivated by homophobia and transphobia, points out that most of these incidents are not reported to the authorities. And the reason behind that is that the victims, as they pointed out, do not trust the institutions and are usually quite afraid of the perpetrators, do not know the procedures, and are not familiar with their rights, or in most of the cases they haven't been outed at all, like they haven't told the community that they live in that they're a part of the LGBTQ plus community. In this episode of YouthSquad, my guest is Nikola. He's the coordinator of Pride Info Center in Belgrade, which is an open center dedicated to the LGBTQ plus youth, a space provided for them to hang out, connect, but most of all feel accepted, loved, and free. However, it's not all glitters and rainbows as much as we would love to. Pride Info Center has been recently vandalized for the 18th time since it's been established in that location. Unknown perpetrators threw red paint on the window of Pride Info Center and the Belgrade Pride logo. This incident happened in the night, and this is the 18th time that the perpetrators have not been caught or sentenced at all. Although there are security cameras everywhere and it's quite visible and quite clear who the perpetrator is, the authorities just don't have any patience to work towards making our society better. So, well, this was quite a depressing intro, but hello, Nikola. It's such a big pleasure to have you here. My practice is to start this podcast by asking my guests, how are you?
Hi. Well, first of all, thank you for the invite and thank you for having me. Yeah, it was a pretty depressed intro, but then again, it's a very realistic one. So it's better for it to be realistic than for it to be glitters and rainbows when it's actually not. Thank you so much for having me again. And yeah, I'm fine. I had some sleep last night. I went to a concert. I went to a concert last night. I had a good time. I escaped the crowds at the exit, so I got to my dorm in time and had some sleep so that I'm fresh for today's episode. And yeah,
it's awesome. It's awesome to have you here, and I can see and I can hear the freshness and the crispness of your voice, which I like a lot. It's crispness. So let's talk about, like, how did you end up working in Pride Info Center at all? Like, when did this happen? How did you think of it?
It's a very interesting story. So I had some experience with project management and project implementation before, since I also coordinate certain aspects of another NGO in my hometown of Pančevo called Compass. And then I saw an opportunity where I can actually get paid for it. So,
wow.
And I decided that I might as well just earn some money for my own pocket so that I don't be dependent on my parents anymore, up to a certain extent, of course. And yeah, that's when I saw the ad on Instagram about the job position, and I decided to apply and just implement some of the previous experiences that I've had in the field. I also knew some of the people who worked there previously, and I contacted some of them regarding advice and regarding certain information about the position, and they've all encouraged me to apply and thought that I would be a very good fit for it. And yeah, I ended up doing my interview. I got a positive feedback, and a year and a half later, here I am.
Here you are,
Yes.
talking to me about being in Pride Info Center. But like, is the topic of LGBTQ plus rights important for you? Do you generally focus on human rights in your work and your activism? Because I also know that you're an activist. Compass, the other organization that you mentioned, also focuses on some activistic human rights topics. So this is quite important for you, and why?
Yes, so Compass primarily does HIV and AIDS prevention, but it does so with a focus on the LGBTI community and on anti-discrimination in general. So it is very important to me, and I feel like human rights in some way do come in contact with almost every aspect of my life. Ever since I started volunteering with Compass, which was when I was like 15, I started exploring those topics. And then when I went into college, I went into med school. And medicine also interferes with human rights in a lot of ways. Maybe not in a first way that a person would think, but there is a lot of ethics and regulations, and the job itself kind of revolves around a human right for a person to have a right to healthcare. And then after dabbling in those waters a little bit, I decided to move on to the LGBTI sector, especially because the topic is very close to me, as I am a member of the LGBTI community, and it is something that I'm familiar not via book or via volunteering work, but via everyday experiences. So I just decided to maybe collect all of my previous knowledge and all of the other experiences that I've gathered so that I can maybe invest it and direct it towards something that's new but also familiar to me. So yeah, it is very important to me. It should be important to all of us.
Obviously. I mean, but I can feel the inner drive you have when you talk about these topics.
Thank you.
So it's really inspiring to see. And I mean, I think it's crucial for us to have such people in these topics, in these areas, in these spheres of work, as well as our society. And I think you do an amazing job, because I've seen you at your job, and
Thank you.
The way you communicate towards the community, the way you work with these youngsters that hang out in your in this Pride Info Center is just amazing, and it's beautiful to see you create a community in the proper, most adequate way of
thank
that
you so much.
word, you know. So I really, really, really appreciate you being here, because also you have quite a lot of experience, as you mentioned. So you definitely can give the perspective to this episode that I would love to, let our audience hear about.
Thank you so much for that feedback. Yeah, every time that you visited Pride Info Center, though, I remember that I was super busy.
Yeah, well, that says a lot.
That says a lot about the position of a Pride Info Center coordinator. Yeah.
Yes. And I mean, there's a lot of work to do in Serbia regarding these topics. So I believe that being busy is the only way to be. So how do you comment these attacks that I mentioned previously? Like, how do you perceive them? Are you scared to be within the premises of Pride Info Center when these attacks happen, or are you now becoming numb to this whole idea of attacks? That's impossible. I don't want to be insensitive. But...
No. I feel like that's a very good question, because often when we get asked about those attacks, we asked about statistics, like the number of the attacks, who did it, what motivated the attack, did the authorities react, and stuff like that. I think that we've been asked maybe once or twice, this being the second time, how do we feel? Like, do we feel safe at the maybe only place in Belgrade where the LGBTI community is supposed to be 110% safe? I mean, we're supposed to be 110% safe anywhere, but unfortunately that's not the case. So I am sometimes feeling a bit afraid, sometimes I'm not. It depends on whether or not our security is there. It depends whether or not there's people at the Pride Info Center. It's a very complex topic for me, and until EuroPride last year, I feel like I was not afraid at all. When I was opening the doors in the morning, like I did not have any sense of fear. I knew that I may find some graffiti on the wall or some spit on the glass window or something like that, but I wasn't afraid. Not until we started receiving a lot of hate on social media and a lot of messages that had like incredibly hateful content, not only hate speech, but also death threats. And until then, I was not afraid. That's when the attacks also started intensifying. And also after EuroPride, the attacks were really numbered. And that's when I started having a bit of fear. I feel like as a coordinator of the Pride Info Center, not only am I being afraid for my own safety, but if there are other people in the premise, I am also in a way responsible for their safety as well. Even though we have our security person there, even though we have all the necessary contacts with the police, even though we are supposed to be safety, I can still not guarantee to me or our volunteers that they are 110% safe, which is a very sad fact, unfortunately.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's also a very, very complex topic. The attacks are very ridiculous to me.
I mean, what do they prove besides the fact that there are people that don't agree with our existence?
Like, what are you trying to say?
Yeah.
Like red paint? Revolutionary. Oh my God.
Nobody thought of that before.
Just flowers for spring. Groundbreaking. Also, we started, this is a bit of an inside joke. I'm not trying to say that these attacks are funny. They're definitely not. They are very concerning.
It's a way to process things. Like, it's a normal thing to do. Like, we try to make light of the situation in order to carry on. Because, like, what can you do?
Yes, we started as an inside joke, like, rating those attacks by, like, creativity. And I realized that if you don't leave like a mark that says this is the group of people who did it, I'm like such a coward.
Oh,
such a coward. At least I remember when like people who are rooting for certain football clubs would like leave their stickers and say like, this is who we are. Like we did this. I'm like, at least you can put your name beside the hateful things that you're doing.
Stand behind your art, like
exactly. So yeah.
So what was the most creative attack you had?
Oh,
if we're going in that direction.
The one with Ratko Mladic.
Oh,
because I was like, what the hell do we have to do with Ratko Mladic? Like when they write something that's anti-LGBTI, like, okay, well, you're at a LGBTI center, so like that's logical. Like, what the hell do we have to do with Ratko Mladic? Like,
Ratko Mladic is for the context is the war criminal, which I mean it's quite a topic in Serbia as well, but like. Obviously, LGBTQ plus people don't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, I understand how they can connect it to our values, considering the fact that we're supposed to, that we are sharing values that are very pro-democracy, anti-discrimination, very pro-human rights, and that is not something that Ratko Mladic's work is being connected to. So in that sense, I can understand, but still, if you really want to showcase your support for a war criminal, this sentence was weird. But if you really want to...
I didn't even hear it in that way until you said it, and then I read it.
If you want to showcase your support to a war criminal, what does the LGBTI community in Serbia have to do with it? And so that was the most creative one so far, but I do have to admit that the most recent one was very hard to scrape.
Oh, so it's like it's on you to clean it up afterwards.
Yes, unfortunately. So when we contacted the police and we contacted the DI to do the investigation, we also talked to them and I asked them if they can talk to someone from the public authorities who's going to come and clean this up, because this time our window was the one that was mostly vandalized, but there was red paint all over the street. It was walls left to the Pride Info Center, walls right to it, the sidewalk in front of it, like a whole area next to the Pride Info Center was also splattered with red paint. And the policeman told me that they will see what they can do and that they will contact me.
That's what they usually do and say.
Needless to say, I received 0 calls from the police that day or any day following that one. So we did end up scraping it and cleaning it by ourselves. We still do not know what to do with the paint that's on the sidewalk. We tried erasing it with the cleaning stuff that we had that we used for the window. It doesn't work.
Yeah. I mean,
and
I think you have to power wash it or something like that.
It's a job that's currently out of our ability proportions, so we really cannot commit to that. But it is
your pay range.
Exactly, definitely out of our pay range. But it's also something that we physically cannot do and do not have the tools to do so. So it's very, very strange seeing how some of our public services are having, and what kind of attitudes they have. Okay, we are kind of used to, which is again a sad fact, to not receiving that much support from the public institutions. But this is something that's not related to us directly. There is a whole sidewalk in one of the busiest streets in Belgrade that's just splattered with red paint, and no one is batting an eye to do anything about it.
But this situation actually, while I was listening to you, I was thinking it illustrates so well the position of human rights and the contact, the institutions and the authorities' reaction to human rights and to, actually the absence of human rights in our country. So my next question for you is where are human rights? I mean, in our previous episode about human rights, I talked with Ksenia about where the human rights in Serbia are, and she mentioned that during EuroPride there was a lot of hate speech going on. The atmosphere was really scary, and it made you, quite afraid, and which you highlighted as well. But, these things, they continue throughout the year. They're not isolated cases, and they're not common only around, they do get manifested the most around certain manifestations.
Yeah, but they still happen throughout the year.
Yes. So what do you think about human rights in Serbia? Can we even talk about human rights in Serbia when such things happen? So someone comes, splatters red paint all over your window, shows a strong message that they don't want you there. The authorities then don't do anything, not only about the fact that you got attacked, but also on the environmental kind of level of things, and the idea of our city being beautiful for tourists and for locals, and just generally they don't do anything. So what does that say about our human rights?
Well, I believe it's a very complex question, especially when it comes to the sub-question of it, which is, can we even talk about human rights in these cases? And part of me says, no, we cannot talk about human rights in this situation, especially because the public support and the public authority support is so low. We need to change our base values and our system values, and then we can start building on this thing that we call human rights. But then again, another part of me says, what do you mean? Of course we need to talk about human rights. If we don't talk about human rights, we're not going to get any improvement. The small improvement that has happened, which I do believe has happened, especially with the position of the LGBTI community, a very small one, but I do believe that it happened. It happened because someone like me sat here and talked about it. It happened because a colleague before me organized a workshop that a certain person attended, who then talked to their friend, who then talked to their friend. So this huge amount of work that all of the activists have been doing for the past several years has resulted in some improvement. It may be a baby step kind of improvement, but I do believe that it exists. I do believe that it's there. And what saddens me is that I am familiar with how draining this job can be. So considering how much work every person that tackles human rights in their everyday life puts in work and having such little results, it saddens me that that's the proportion of it. But then again, if that little baby step and that small improvement is the result of someone's work, I'll be glad to contribute to that work.
I got chills while you were talking. This was so motivational.
And I didn't even start singing.
Yeah.
So,
but you can. I mean, the expression is completely on you.
You cannot afford that. No kidding, sorry.
Maybe we can, dedicate a whole episode to you being like
Maybe.
a musical about human rights. Modcast musical on human rights. I think we should write this down. It's quite a brand new.
That's what the activism scene in Serbia right now needs. An activism musical podcast.
Yes. We're gonna sing while we cry. But no, I mean, you really pointed out a silver lining here, which is often quite. I mean, even during the intro that I gave, it was quite depressive.
Yeah.
Depressing, and I think it's important to understand that yes, it's quite bad. It's quite not somewhere where we want to stay, but there are certain things that are happening, and that's talking about it. Even the fact that such a podcast like this one exists, I think is a good sign that we are actually onto something. We are definitely like moving towards something which we can maybe at some moment call a better world for us. And I think it's important to have people like you. I think it's awesome that you found your way and you found your role and purpose within this story, within this reality where, it's draining, it's quite hard. You probably go to sleep thinking about a million things that can go wrong in the morning, but you still wake up and do it. I think it's just amazing, and I cannot thank you enough for talking about this.
Thank you.
I really hope, the time flew by talking about this, and I really hope we get a chance to tackle it more in depth in the future. And I think it's really important to actually talk about this with someone who is doing the work, who is on.
Thank you so much.
On there. No, thank you.
Stop it.
Yeah.
No, continue. Kidding.
Yeah. When we stop recording, I'll give you some more compliments because I got a lot. I'm just charming like that. No, but seriously, now I really find quite eye-opening everything that you mentioned. The things the way you process, the way you handle these attacks, and all of these that you mentioned illustrates really well what we experience in Serbia and what we can see not only here but in the whole region, and especially in more conservative, patriotic, maybe even right-wing countries, which Serbia is unfortunately a part of. So thank you again for talking about this topic. I wish you all the luck in your future work, and I will be there to root you.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for supporting us and allowing us to share bits of our story. If anyone who's listening this wants to maybe connect with Belgrade Pride's work, you can follow us on our social media at Belgrade Pride on Twitter, Instagram, if you use Facebook, or your mom uses Facebook. But yeah, follow us for future events and see you at Pride. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to YouthSquad. My name is Maria. The YouthSquad podcast series is recorded under a small-scale project in the field of youth called Voicehood of Youth, which will cover 4 topics: human rights, gender equality, European multiculturalism, inclusion and diversity, and active participation. The project is implemented within the Erasmus Plus program and is financed by the Swedish National Agency. Thank you for tuning in, and make sure you stay tuned for another episode.